So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. Hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video, guys. Really smash that like button. Really helps the algorithm, as you guys know. Hit the subscribe button, that also helps. There's been a war of words between Oscar De La Hoya and Eddie Hearn. And Oscar De La Hoya basically said, why did Eddie Hearn put Canelo Alvarez in there with Bivol? He was irrelevant. And it was a dumb move from Eddie Hearn's part. Eddie Hearn fired back saying that, well, Oscar De La Hoya put Canelo in there at the age of 23 against Floyd Mayweather, and criticized, Oscar De La Hoya, saying because Oscar De La Hoya questioned that Eddie Hearn don't know nothing about boxing. As a promoter, he's not a very good matchmaker and stuff. So he really questioned Eddie Hearn's credentials as a promoter, matching him with somebody that good in his prime. That much bigger, and a guy that's irrelevant. He goes, well, now Bivol's a superstar because he beat Canelo, but he didn't need to get that opportunity, and I would have never matched him against Bivol. Firstly, that's not something that fans want to hear, because that was seen as a dangerous fight for Canelo when it turned out to be just that. But Oscar's basically saying that I would pick and choose Canelo's opponents, and I think that's why Canelo separated from Oscar in the first place, because Canelo wanted more control over his career. I think he gets that with Hearn. Hearn doesn't really, with these big stars, Hearn doesn't really take control. He might do it with lesser fighters, but these fighters, they control. He even openly says they own the show. I just listen to what they have to say. I just do exactly what they say. Whereas Oscar, in my opinion, was actually probably trying to choose the fights for Canelo, and hence why I think they bumped heads and Canelo wanted to do what he wanted to do. Hence why he left. In my opinion, Hearn makes far more competitive fights. But Oscar De La Hoya made a lot of fights. And as Eddie Hearn said, that, put him in there with Mayweather. It's a bit of a different situation, though. I do agree with Oscar. I don't think that this is the same situation with Canelo fighting Mayweather. Firstly, Canelo wasn't a star at the point he fought Mayweather. He was a star. He was a huge up-and-coming rising star. But he was not in a position where he was pound for pound the best in the world. He was pay-per-view star. He wasn't a pay-per-view star. He was actually a pay-per-view fighting on Mayweather's pay-per-views. And that was the first time he actually headlined his own pay-per-view, if I'm not mistaken, when he fought Mayweather. So he was not that big at that point when Oscar put him in there with Mayweather. And it was an opportunity that Canelo couldn't really turn down. You can't turn down an opportunity fighting the pound-for-pound king, the biggest star in the sport, the cash cow in Mayweather. Canelo couldn't turn down that opportunity. It was too big an opportunity. And also, Canelo was seen, he wasn't the favorite by any stretch, but many felt that he could beat Mayweather because Mayweather was coming at the end of his career. And they thought, well, Canelo might be a step too far. He's big, he's strong, he's good, and then he may beat Mayweather. It didn't turn out to be the case. Mayweather totally schooled Canelo. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think it's a completely different situation to put fighting Bivol. Because fighting Bivol, you didn't need to go down that route. The only problem is with the Hearn situation is, Hearn could only offer him that. Hearn couldn't offer him any other fights because Benavidez and Bivol aren't with Hearn. Benavidez and Charlo aren't with Hearn. So if Canelo didn't take that deal, then that wouldn't have been with Hearn, would it? Because Hearn has nothing to do with Canelo if he had taken the PBC deal. So that's where I don't get Oscar's point of view, because Hearn doesn't have anyone else that he could offer Canelo bar Bivol. So unless, Hearn was going to offer him someone like John Ryder, which would have been a complete mismatch, maybe Golovkin. Personally, I think he should have put Golovkin in there first with him. That's what I think he should have done. But Bivol was probably a crazy match, made. But he had no choice. He had no other fighters that he could offer Canelo. Really, that was up to Canelo, and it's Canelo's fault and Canelo's team's fault for taking that fight. They shouldn't have taken that fight. It's Canelo's fault, not Hearn's fault, because like I said, Hearn doesn't make the decisions. Hearn just offers him the fighters that he's got, and Canelo made the decision. Canelo should have taken the PBC deal. So that's really Canelo and his team's fault, not Hearn's fault. I actually think that the Mayweather fight, although it's a fight that I don't think Canelo could turn down, I think Oscar made that fight. We're talking about Oscar, that actually made that fight. Canelo at that point probably didn't have the control over his career like he did with Hearn, because Canelo actually chose that fight. Hearn didn't choose that fight because Canelo had 2 deals on the table. He ended up taking the Hearn deal. Hearn just offered it him. He didn't, you know, he didn't make that fight. Whereas with De La Hoya and Mayweather, De La Hoya made that fight. However, for me, it's a no-brainer taking a fight with Mayweather. You have to take the fight with Mayweather. So I can look at it from both sides and analyze both of their cases, and they both have points. You know, Hearn says, well, you put him in with Mayweather. Yeah, he did. However, he'd be stupid not to take the Mayweather fight at that point, because Canelo grew from that. You know, his profile grew from that fight. Even though he lost, he still became bigger. So it would have been stupid for Canelo not to take that fight. Likewise, with the Canelo situation with Hearn, Hearn's not really to blame because Canelo was the one that decided to fight Bivol. So really, you can't really blame either Oscar or Eddie Hearn, because Eddie Hearn wants Canelo on his platform on DAZN, and he doesn't have Charlo and Benavidez. So if Canelo had taken that deal, he would have had to fight with PBC and under Fox. So it's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer. Of course, Hearn's going to try offering him Bivol and Golovkin because he has those 2 fighters. He doesn't have Benavidez and Charlo. If he had Benavidez and Charlo, I'm pretty sure he would have tried to offer him Benavidez and Charlo. You can only offer him what you've got. He can't offer him Benavidez and Charlo because he hasn't got those fighters. So what do you want Hearn to do? You know, what do you want him to say? Well, Canelo, I think you should go and take the Benavidez and Charlo deal, when that's going to have nothing to do with him. Now, if Canelo had decided to take it, I'm pretty sure Hearn wouldn't have minded. He would have said after that deal, we'll look to see if we can work with Canelo again. But, you know, Canelo decided to take the DAZN deal, Eddie Hearn deal. So at the end of the day, you know, I don't think criticizing Eddie is what he should be doing. Eddie had no control over Canelo's career. Canelo has full control, and Reynoso have full control over Canelo's career. Eddie's just offering them fights. When De La Hoya made the fight with Mayweather, De La Hoya had control over Canelo's career, because De La Hoya was his promoter, and De La Hoya, in my opinion, had a much more control over Canelo than what Hearn does, because Hearn doesn't really have any control over these cash cows. What Hearn does is he presents offers and he works with them to get the best deal for them, but he doesn't have control over their careers or makes decisions for them. No, they make decisions. And he just listens and does what they say, basically. So Eddie Hearn doesn't have any control over Canelo's career. There's a reason why Canelo cut ties with De La Hoya, because De La Hoya probably had too much control over his career. And he didn't want Oscar to have that kind of control. He wanted to have more control. And that's why he likes it with Hearn, because he has all the control. He makes the decisions. So when Oscar says he put him in with a guy like Bivol, he didn't. Canelo went and fought Bivol. Canelo decided he wanted. Hearn just offered him the fighters that he has at his disposal. He said, well, I've got Bivol and I've got Golovkin. Are you interested? And Canelo took that deal. That's Canelo's fault, not Hearn's fault. So you can't really blame Hearn. But of course, you know, promoters are trying to get at promoters because they want to get one over each other, trying to make out that Hearn's a really bad promoter, which he's not. Oscar De La Hoya is not a bad promoter, but Oscar De La Hoya had more control over Canelo's career than Eddie does. Simple as that. And I got to give Oscar credit, because Oscar built Canelo into the superstar he was. Let's be brutally honest, Hearn got a developed and finished product. Oscar De La Hoya did all the work. He's the one that made him a star. Just like Eddie Hearn made Joshua a star, he had to do the work from the ground up. Oscar De La Hoya did that. Oscar De La Hoya, in my opinion, created Canelo Alvarez, made him a star. You know, so I don't think Canelo's got any bigger under Hearn. I think Canelo was always big. You know, if you look at the pay-per-view numbers that he did with PBC, you know, that had nothing to do with Hearn. So, for me, personally, I think Canelo had to take the Mayweather fight. I think he had no choice. I think with the Bivol situation, I think Hearn offered him what he had, and Canelo decided to take that deal, which probably was a mistake. I think he should have probably stayed at 168 and looked to fight all the fighters there, defend a few titles, but instead, like Roy Jones said, you'd already win a title at 175. So unless you were looking to become undisputed at 175, there was no point of you going back there. There was guys at 168 that you could have fought. There was no reason for you to go back to 175. You know, so I think it was just a poor move from Canelo's part. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that deal. I criticized it at the time. When I say criticized it, I did say I didn't understand what Canelo's doing here. Why is he fighting Bivol then going and fighting Golovkin? Don't make any sense. You know, if you have a goal of coming back down to 168, stay at 168. Don't go and fight Bivol then come back down. It don't make any sense. So I didn't understand the deal. That's why I even said prior to him accepting that deal, I thought he'll take the PBC deal, because it makes a lot more sense, because he'd be staying at 168. Then he can go to 175. But he decided that he was going to fight at 175, then come back down to 168. It just didn't make any sense. I thought the whole structure of the deal was weird and bizarre. You know, why would you win a world title at 175 and then go back down to 168 to fight Golovkin? It just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And then what are you looking to then probably fight for undisputed? I didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense. And it kind of backfired, because he ended up losing against Bivol. And now he's going to fight Golovkin. And now he's going to have to fight Dmitry Bivol again, probably in May. So again, it probably worked out. It didn't work out well, in my opinion. So he should have probably taken the PBC deal, who, in my opinion, beats those fighters comfortably. That's just I think he would have beaten Benavidez and would have beaten Charlo. There was no need for him. I think he should have taken that deal. I think the deal structure was better. You know, staying at 168, didn't have to go to 175, then come back down to 168. And these are another thing that we're not taking into consideration. How would him coming back down to 168 affect his performance against Golovkin? Let's see. I don't think it'll affect it much, but, you know, I just found it bizarre. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about Anthony Joshua. It looks like Anthony Joshua is set to leave Sky Sports to join DAZN, and he will fight Alexander Usyk on the DAZN platform, which is, if this is true, this will be a big, it's not been officially confirmed, but, you know, there's unofficial sources saying that it's very good chance that he's already confirmed that he's going to be going with DAZN, which I think he will. And that's a big coup for Eddie Hearn and DAZN. And I think Eddie Hearn wanted this all along, because I think Eddie Hearn really wanted Anthony. And I think from the way Eddie was talking, I think it's certain that he's going to join DAZN. And Eddie Hearn said that the decision's already been made. And Eddie Hearn looked pretty happy. And I think the reason why Eddie Hearn's pretty happy is because this was his goal all along, to take all the fighters, including Anthony Joshua, to DAZN. Because I think DAZN weren't happy with the fact that, yeah, he had all his other stable moved to DAZN, but he wanted Anthony Joshua, because that's the biggest cash cow. DAZN wanted Anthony Joshua to be with DAZN. You know, if Anthony Joshua wasn't going to be with DAZN, it probably didn't make sense, and they knew that the subscriber won't grow at the rate they want it to grow at without Anthony Joshua. So the fact that now they've got Anthony Joshua and the rematch will be on DAZN, that's a big coup for DAZN, because imagine the subscribers that are going to tune into DAZN now. So DAZN, the only problem is with the Anthony Joshua deal is, although it's a good deal and it's a big coup for DAZN, the problem is that Anthony Joshua, if he loses to Alexander Usyk, what next? Because don't get me wrong, there's still some big fights for Anthony Joshua, but what's his hunger and desire going to be if he loses to Usyk, which I expect him to? I think Usyk goes into that fight as a major favorite and people expect him to win. If Anthony Joshua does lose, paying him all that kind of money, and I don't know, I think it's a 2-fight deal, which is probably fair, but they're going to be paying him a lot of money for the 2 fights. If he loses to Usyk, what's going to be the next fight after that? I think you may get an Anthony Joshua Wilder fight. I think that is a fight that they probably should target, in my opinion. But again, that's going to be a very difficult fight to make. We've already been through that. Maybe Anthony Joshua fights Tyson Fury, even if he loses to Usyk. Maybe Tyson Fury fights Usyk, beats Usyk, and then, you know, Tyson Fury fights Anthony Joshua, even though he lost. Because it still be a fight that people will still tune in for. But again, there'll be a broadcaster issue there again, because Tyson's with BT, Anthony's with DAZN, so how are they going to make that fight? I personally think an Anthony Joshua Wilder fight, while Usyk fights Fury, if Usyk beats AJ, I think a Wilder AJ fight would be massive. I think that would blow the socks off it, and I think that should be something that Hearn should look to target, because really Wilder's in no man's land now as well. AJ, if he loses to Usyk, he'll be in no man's land, right? He ain't gonna get a shot unless someone like Fury gives him a voluntary. And at that point, Fury might pull down his pants, you know, might say, I want 80% or 70%, which AJ is probably not going to accept. So I think a fight between Wilder and AJ would be a proper 50-50 down the middle. I don't think AJ can command at this point. If he loses to Usyk again, even though he does big numbers, I don't think he can command, I'm 60, I want 70, I think AJ's got to realize that his days are numbered. If he loses to Usyk, his commercial power is not the same because he's losing fights. His draw is going to drop. He's not going to be the same star that he was. People are going to look at him differently. So for me, he then just needs to make the fights and look to try add to his legacy so he can get more names on his record. Because when I look at AJ, a lot of people say he's got a great resume, which he has, better than any other heavyweight. He's fought more top 10 guys. The problem is he hasn't fought the best guys. Well, Usyk's one of the best. He lost to him. So he's fought him. If he loses to him again, he would have lost to him. But he hasn't really fought the other two best in the era, in my opinion, in Wilder and Fury. And most people would pick against him to lose those fights. So if he does have those fights and end up losing those fights, which there is a very good chance he may lose, AJ's career and resume may look completely different if he was to lose to Usyk, Wilder and Fury. People would view AJ completely different. And this is what I'm trying to say, that AJ might have 3 losses prior to even fighting Wilder and Fury. You know, so again, I feel like AJ needs to make these big fights. He needs to make all these big fights. And I don't think going to the table and demanding 70, 80% is going to work anymore. I think he's got to understand that his commercial power has dropped massively. He isn't the star he once was. And he isn't the player in the heavyweight division he once was because of the defeats. You know, and I think now Fury is probably taken over commercially as well. I think if AJ loses to Usyk and Fury goes on to beat Usyk, he would be by far even bigger than Joshua commercially at that point. You know, so I think AJ really needs to beat Usyk. You know, otherwise his brand, his appeal, his commercial power that he has, that's all gone, man, as far as I'm concerned. So he really needs to beat Usyk in the rematch. Otherwise, it's curtains, in my opinion. Not taking anything away from AJ, I think he's a good fighter, but I think it's curtains if he was to lose to, you know, Usyk again. I think it's his career. It's very difficult to see how he comes back from that. And the only big fights out there are obviously Fury and Wilder, really, then. And what hunger and desire would he have left? Because AJ will no longer be that cash cow and no longer be able to go to and dictate things. Yeah, against the lesser fighters, you know, he'll be able, like Dillian Whites or stuff like that, he'll be able to command, but not against your Wilders and Furies and guys like that. Which he can't do at this point. He can't command more than, like, the Fury fight, even if he beats Usyk, he ain't going to command more than 50-50. That's going to be 50-50. I think before, AJ was such a clear A-side because he was such a big star. Now he's no longer that guy, you know, because there's other guys that have caught up. Wilder's caught up, Fury's caught up. They're also big stars that have earned a lot of money. So let's see, man. Let's see. But it looks like AJ's joining DAZN. Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Do you think this is a good or bad thing for boxing? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.